Thank you for tuning into our podcast, Canal Days, What Life is Like in the Industrial Connecticut River Valley of Massachusetts. I'm your host, Carrie, and joining us today is Holyoke's very own local historian and creator of the historical tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Camus. He personally offers and leads public and private tours, as well as presentations of historical sites within communities throughout Massachusetts. Currently, the communities he has chosen to focus on this year are Holyoke, Chicopee, South Hadley, and East Hampton, and also Granby and Amherst as well. His tours spotlight on the local canals, reservoirs, cemeteries, and churches, as well as various parks, streets, and selected historical houses within each community. In today's episode, we will be discussing the Cherry Lane Cemetery, located in the community of Springfield, Massachusetts. So, why was Cherry Lane Cemetery made?
This is a Baptist cemetery. It was made because the First Baptist Church of Springfield was alongside of it. And it's definitely a churchyard cemetery for that reason. And Baptists like to have their own cemetery. It's one of the only Protestant groups that like to have their own separate cemetery because they really wanted to be away from the Congregationalists, and they just existed that way, one off on their own, doing their own way, compared to other Protestant religions, which really didn't care that much. And so the reason why it was made is because the First Baptist Society came together in Springfield, and of course you need a church, and the church was just to the northeast by 100 feet or so, and in fact it butted this cemetery, and it's gone, but the cemetery of course is there, and that's of great interest. And I can tell you why it's now the oldest one in Springfield, and what the gravestones look like, and whether it's well kept.
And why is it the oldest cemetery in Springfield?
Right, it used to be the second oldest cemetery in Springfield. The oldest was the old burial ground in downtown Springfield. That was from the 1660s when Springfield was actually founded. But in the late 1840s, they moved that entire cemetery into the Springfield Cemetery. And so, the next oldest is the Cherry Lane Cemetery. It's about from around 1828 or so, and that means it's the oldest by about 14 years now. So when I say it's the oldest that was never moved. All right, else the old burial ground would be. And that's a very unique honor in such an old place like Springfield that's almost 400 years old. That's a great honor to be that way. And it's all because the Baptists, when they got away from the Congregationalists, wanted their own place. But this happened over and over again across New England. And it happened to Granby, South Hadley, East Long Meadow, lots of places around the valley.
And quickly, before we continue with our interview, just to fill our listeners in, for more information or to sign up for any of his various tours, you can check out his website at holyokecanaltour.org. And there you can also find videos and podcasts of the stops along each of his tours, as well as photos and text of the historical sites throughout as well. And for private tours and other inquiries, you can email him directly at bobcat4214B@yahoo.com. And his tours make for fun educational outdoor activities for families and group parties. So getting back to our interview, where are the gravestones of the Cherry Lane Cemetery?
All right, you'd be a fool if you stop at the gate and stop at the sidewalk and say there's no gravestones. But if you actually go in there, and you have to have it unlocked for yourself, you would find that a lot of gravestones are still there. They're all been placed flat. They used to be upright limestone tablet-style gravestones, but since it wasn't maintained or it was changed drastically in sometime around 1900, all the tablets were placed flat. But they didn't start their life off that way. In that position, they're going to erode even quicker. And so if you go in there, I would guess by the size of the cemetery, there should be 800 barrels in there, and it's almost entirely filled up. But if you walk around, you don't find 800 different names on tablets. You might, if you're lucky on a good day, find about 100. And where are the rest? Well, they're probably sunk into the ground. So, Springfield has tried at various times to pull them up, and it succeeded a few times, and they put gravel below them, and that maintains its position. But even that will start to sink into the ground. And they've done a great job, Springfield, in that in the middle of the cemetery, you're going to find a memorial stone which has the names of about 200 people on it. Those are the 200 names they could figure out existed. And they put those with the first and last name plus the year of death. And so thus, you have a way of figuring out at least 200 of the 800 burials there. And that's great. Now, if you walk around and look at the stones, you're going to figure out that some of the stones have names not on the memorial tablet, right, and vice versa. And this tablet's names were taken off of a list that the Springfield Historical Museums have, and that'll give you a hint that there's many more stones on there. And it's looked after by Springfield in a lot of different ways, and we'll talk about maintenance. But they have a keeper across the street that watches out for it, and once a week, of course, they go in there, cut the grass, make sure everything's okay. And if you walk the absolute perimeter of it, you're going to see some stones hidden up against a fence because the bushes came afterwards, the trees came afterwards. So some of the stones are along the outside, so be careful.
And is the cemetery well maintained?
Yes, for a very old cemetery that's going to go on to 200 years old very soon, it's well maintained. Sadly, over 100 years ago, most of the stones were dropped to be horizontal, and they did that probably for the same reason that they moved a lot of stones in most old cemeteries. They wanted to make it look like a modern cemetery where everything was straight lines when it wasn't. A churchyard is usually an angle, usually stones are not lined up, right? They're grouped by families, and they'd always be vertical. And they would have, at least the very old ones before 1850, have footstones also. But they were dropped in the Victorian area down to horizontal, and there they remain. I wish someone put them back up, but at least they're in order, and the grass is well cut. And Springfield has done a great job with the tablet in order to make this look like it's well taken care of, which it is.
And thank you, Robert, for educating us.